In comparison to the traditional scale, again, when we're using number correct or percent correct, you can see that a 4.0 to a 5.0 is like a 90 to 100. A 3.0 to 3.9 is like an 80 to 89 and so on. So for teachers and for students, if you're looking at this comparison, you can see if I'm earning a 3.2, that's like earning an 82. So it's pretty easy for students and teachers to see the correlation between percentage scale and the 5-point scale. Where the game changes a little bit is when the student is earning below a 1, because we have to take this 60-point spread on the percentage scale and make it match up to the 0 to 1 on the scale we're going to be using. So that is something that, you know, when we're below the passing mark, there's not that simple one-to-one correlation. Like I said, a 1.5 is like a 65. A 2.2 is like a 72. So that's something that, you know, again, we're going to work with students on to understand, but they'll pick it up pretty quick. I did, and so if I can pick it up, you know, they'll be able to pick it up. So again, one low grade does not doom a student to failure. Students still earn no credit for no work. There are some schools that address this issue of the percentage scale and the imbalance between 0 and passing by saying to teachers, you can't put anything in the gradebook below a 50%. Well, that confuses both teachers and students, because the message is you can do nothing and still get half credit. You know, it accomplishes the mission of the F range is equivalent to the D, to the C, to the B, and so on. But what the message it's sending is, if you don't turn it in, you're going to get half credit for it. Or you might turn it in, and you could do worse than 50. Or you could not turn it in at all and go ahead and get 50. So that's not something that we wanted to do. And again, the goal is not to punish students with zeros, but to require them to do the work. That's the remedy for students not doing their work, is for us to set the expectation that it has to be done. And so teachers might be using things like incomplete grades rather than issuing the 0. Because for a lot of students, once I get the 0, there's this sense of, well, it's over now, and so they move on. And so they don't actually complete the task. They don't demonstrate mastery. Then they get to the end of the course and they can't demonstrate mastery on the final exam because they took that 0 on the unit test you know, several weeks ago and never knew whether they mastered that skill or not. And then they get to the final and they can't perform. So our goal is not to remedy zeros with a punishing grade. Our goal is to remedy zeros with expectations that the students must complete the work. So if we were to compare, you can see that for the student who gets a 0 on the percentage scale with these 5 grades, their grade would be a D. For the student that gets the 0 on the 0 to 5 scale, their grade would be a lower C. So the 0 does impact their grades. You can see that those grades are mostly C plus B minus work. So that 0 did bring the student down to a low C. So they know that they can't continue to perform in that way because their grade will suffer. But again, the punishment fits the crime. We're not giving the student the death sentence with a 0. But they are not getting credit for that work. So again, like I said, teachers can record the 0 as an incomplete. If the student has incomplete assignments at the end of the semester, the teacher can let the process work. If you have an incomplete at the end of the semester, you have 6 weeks to remediate it, or it turns into a failing grade. And so one of the things we need students to understand is that's not a situation you want to find yourself in, because you go on to the next semester and you have your 5 classes that you have to balance your coursework for the current learning. If you have incompletes, now you have to still make up for what you didn't do during the first semester. And that's faulty logic. You know, in the moment when they're seeing that they have an incomplete, they're thinking, well, okay, I have time to make it up. But I can tell you, most students from experience, they realize that they get into that next semester, and it's very difficult to balance the coursework that is today's and the coursework that was yesterday's because I took an incomplete in that class. So this is, again, a way that we're addressing the problem of when students don't comply or don't complete what they're supposed to do without it being doomed for failure. It's to say we expect it to be done. Finally, one of the things I want to talk about is a redo policy. And so there are a lot of teachers that when students submit something that doesn't meet standards, they allow students to do it again. And what we're working toward is that redoing an assignment that doesn't meet standards is not a privilege, it's an expectation. As a parent, if my son comes home from school with a spelling test that has several mistakes on it, okay, my job is not to say, oh, well, it's over now, and have my son continue to not know how to spell those words. My job is to work with him and make sure that he knows how to spell those words, because that's why we're teaching him to spell them. So in our schools, we're moving toward an expectation for students to redo something when it doesn't meet standards. If it doesn't meet standards, we're going to give you feedback, and we're going to expect you to do it again or to complete it properly so that you can demonstrate mastery. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to some students need more attempts or more time, depending on the student, depending on the skill, depending on the assignment. So when they make the good faith effort to show mastery, but they don't master, it's our job to say, it didn't master, here's why, here's what you can do to get better, now go back and do it. Okay? So it's an expectation, it's not a privilege. And there are some, different schools people I've talked to that say it's not fair to the student who did it right the first time. But my response to that would be, the student who did it right the first time didn't have to do it again. So again, if our goal is for all kids to learn, then we have to make a system that allows for all kids to learn, not to say you get the grade because you did it right the first time, and if you didn't, then so sad, too bad. If all means all, then all means all. And so if that's what we believe, then we have to have a system that supports that. Now, a couple things for students to understand when it comes to redo policy. It's not a do policy. So you can't just not turn something in and expect to be able to redo it for a better grade or turn in, for lack of a better word, garbage on the day it's due just to get a shot at a redo. Your teacher has the discretion to say, this is not a complete assignment, or this is not an honest attempt. You're going to have to complete it. You're not redoing it, you're doing it. And it will be subject to that teacher's procedure for late work. We talked as a staff about, should we be establishing a district-wide late policy? And so that's something we'll be talking about, but we wanted the first priority to be, how do we address the needs of the students who are meeting deadlines, who are doing what they're supposed to do? And so we started with redo first, and then we'll deal with late next. But my point is, when a student submits something late, they have to complete it and turn it in before the teacher can evaluate whether it needs to be redone or whether it met standards or not. Okay, so this is not a policy that allows students to say, oh, this is due tomorrow, let me just throw something together and turn it in, and it's okay because when I redo it, then I'll get the grade. That's not going to be allowed. All right? Now, having said that, when the student does make the honest attempt, and when the student does make a complete attempt at the assignment or takes the exam and doesn't do well on it, when they redo it, the policy states that the higher grade, the new grade stands. We're not going to average the grades, okay? Or we're not going to say you get the new grade minus one letter grade. Again, if I go take my driver's exam and I fail it, I don't get, the second attempt driver's license, okay? There's nothing that distinguishes me from somebody else who passed it the first time. Or if I take the bar exam 6 times, okay? There's nothing in my law license that states the number of attempts it took me to pass the bar. So the same applies. If it takes a student 2 attempts to master, then it takes them 2 attempts to master. But if on that second attempt they demonstrated mastery, then that's what they will earn. We have a flow chart that we created for teachers that shows that when a student turns something in, if it's on time, it's graded. If it meets standards, the grade stands. If it doesn't meet standards, the student redoes it, the teacher grades it. If it meets standards, that's the grade. If it doesn't, the policy states that the teacher has the discretion to say, go back and try it again, or to not do that, because there are some assignments that are not able to be done multiple times. In a biology class, we only have so many frogs, right? So if they need to redo that dissection, we might not be able to give them multiple attempts unless we have them do something like a virtual dissection on the computer or something like that. But there may be some assignments where we are not able to give multiple attempts. But again, students will be afforded at least one opportunity to redo that assignment to master. And then after that, the teacher will have to work with the student to decide if they can continue to redo. Now, grade reporting. So this has to do with what you all as parents will see on Family Access on Skyward or on your students' report cards. So on Family Access, it's going to show your students' progress on each standard. So you're not just going to see that Tim is getting a C in algebra. You will see that, but you're also going to see, here's how Tim is performing on integers. Here's how he's performing on one-step equations. Here's how he's performing on positive, negative numbers. So if I need to get extra help for Tim, I know what help he needs. It's much easier to go to that child's teacher or for after-school help or for tutoring if I know, hey, he needs work on positive, negative numbers. That's what I need you to help him on. Not, well, he's getting a D, so I don't know what to do. So that's what the kind of information you're going to see on Family Access and on the report cards, and I'll show you an example. So this is not, it's a little bit blurry, but you can see the point. This is an example of the kinds of things you'll see. It might look a little bit different, but the content is what you'll see on Family Access. So you'll see in this math class, I'm getting a B. On addition, I'm getting a B. On subtraction, on division, I'm getting a C. And on subtraction and multiplication, I'm getting a B. So if, again, I have to think about what do I got to work on, I have to work on division. So you as a parent will be able to see that kind of information much more easily than if you're trying to sort of pore over the actual assignments in the grade book to see if there's any information you can get from those to find out what skill Tim needs to work on. When it comes to report cards, again, the format might look a little bit differently. We're working with Skyward on how we can lay this out on the actual report card template itself. But the content will give you this information. The only thing that might change is rather than a letter grade on each specific skill, we might put the number there instead, just to make it easier to differentiate between the overall grade, which would be a letter, and then the skill grades that come with it. Yes, question? Same way as ever. So the question was, how will your GPA be calculated? So we're still using the same system for GPA. So your grade in the course is still going to be a letter grade from A to E. Okay? And A will still be worth 4 grade points, and B will still be worth 3 grade points, and so on. So your GPA will be calculated the same. The sub scores, or these skills scores, are informational, so you know what am I doing well on, what am I not doing well on in the class. All right? But your overall grade will still appear on the report card. The overall grade is what will appear on your transcript, but your report card will give more information than just the overall letter grade. When it comes to the comments, I know for those of you who've been here for at least a couple years, what you might be used to is for certain classes, for certain teachers, sometimes students get comments like participates well in class, or completes assigned work on time, or students should seek extra help. What we didn't see happening, for one thing, is that all teachers were consistently doing it, and B, most teachers were using the same comment codes if they were using them at all. Now, for those of you that may not be aware, we are a PBIS school. PBIS is a system for developing sort of school culture and character and positive discipline in the school. And so we've changed our comment reporting system, and you've seen this already on the report cards this year, to report out on students' development in pro-social habits, which is how well they work well with others, whether they're punctual, whether they attend class, those kinds of things. Their academic behaviors, okay, so the way that they study, take notes, those kinds of things. And then their problem-solving behaviors. Do they seek extra help? Do they work with their counselor? Do they, if they're not in school, do they come in and find out what they've missed? Do they choose to sit in the place in the classroom that helps them to be better at learning and not distracted? So those are things that we are going to continue to work on communicating to parents what those all mean. But those are the things that we want to report out on the report card, again, separate from the academic grade. So that information will be on the report card. One of the things that we're working with Skyward on that's a real challenge that we may not be able to get because it has to pull from the grade book, and teachers may mark missing assignments differently. So unless we standardize it, we may not be able to get missing assignments on the report card. But wouldn't it be great if you saw that, I'm getting a C in the class, but I also happen to have 11 missing assignments? Well, gee, that might have something to do with it. So that's something we're working on, but we may not have. And then period-by-period attendance and tardies is something, again, that you're seeing on report cards this year for the first time. So we're going to continue to do that as well. So again, I may be getting good grades in 4 of my classes, but that one class I have a low grade in, well, gee, it so happens that I've been tardy to that class 9 times. Maybe it's my first period class, or it's the class I go to right after lunch, or whatever. But at least it gives us information to ask those questions. All right, so we want the report card to be a resource for you to know what should I be focusing on when it comes to my child's success in each of his or her courses.